fight the battle. He dropped his bow. He said, I shall not fight. And he said, now I am confused about my duty. But he surrendered to Krishna and accepted Krishna as his guru. We should do the same. We should all admit, I'm an illusion. I am confused. But I will become liberated by accepting Krishna as the supreme authority. And what is this knowledge? All living beings are but part of the Supreme. This will be explained by Krishna in chapter 15, that all living beings are parts and parcels of Him, parts and parcels of Krishna. And they are His. We are God's property. We belong to the family of Krishna. This is how we should see ourselves. Not that I belong to this family, I belong to this community, I belong to this country. These are all designations. These are all temporary. This is illusion. I'm not American, I'm not Hindu, I'm not black, I'm not white, I'm not man, I'm not woman. I am part and parcel of Krishna. I belong to Him. This is self-realization. Now, the chapter will finish up verses 36 through 42. Krishna will help us to understand transcendental knowledge. I invite you to come in. Even if you are considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over the ocean of miseries. I very much like this sinful of all sinners. You may think that you are so fallen that you're the lowest of the low. Doesn't matter. Just get on board the boat of transcendental knowledge. Just read and hear Bhagavad Gita every day. Then you'll be on a safe boat, not the Titanic, but on a safe boat, and you will cross and you will go back to Godhead. As a blazing fire turns firewood to ashes, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all reactions to material activities. This is a nice example that Krishna is giving. Those of you who know, when there is a homa, when there is a fire sacrifice, the people are throwing the grains into the fire. The priest is pouring the ghee, not dalda. Sacrifice should be performed with ghee. And the mantras are being chanted, and the wood is being added. At the end of the sacrifice, everything has turned into ash. That is what happens to all the reactions of our sinful material activities when we engage in the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna consciousness, and surrender to Krishna. In this world, there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism, and one who has become accomplished in the practice of devotional service enjoys this knowledge within oneself in due course of time. So you must be patient. As they say, Rome was not built in a day. Your advancement in Krishna consciousness will gradually increase. Krishna will mention this in chapter 6, gradually, step by step. But for now, we should know nothing is better than transcendental knowledge. This is the mature fruit. Sometimes we pick fruits, but we want the mature fruit, the ripened fruit, because that is the most tasty. So the tasty fruit is this transcendental knowledge. And if you become very accomplished in this Bhagavad Gita or devotional service, you will taste that fruit. And what is that taste? It is called bliss, Ananda. A faithful person who is dedicated to transcendental knowledge and who subdues their senses is eligible to achieve such knowledge. And having achieved it, one quickly attains the supreme spiritual peace. I have been preaching Krishna consciousness over 30 years. Wherever I go around the world, inevitably people ask me, Swamiji, give me peace. Can you please bless me? I cannot bless anyone. Peace. Krishna is telling you how to achieve peace. You have to be a faithful person, faithful to Krishna. You have to be dedicated to this transcendental knowledge. And very importantly, subdue the senses. Then you're eligible for transcendental knowledge. And once you have transcendental knowledge, now you have the supreme spiritual peace. In the material world, there's temporary peace, because peace in the material world will always be followed by war, because that is the way of the material world. Real peace, that's on the spiritual platform. That's what Bhagavad Gita is teaching, and you can have that peace when you follow Bhagavad Gita and get the transcendental knowledge. But ignorant and faithless persons who doubt the revealed scriptures do not attain God consciousness. They fall down. For the doubting soul, there is happiness neither in this world nor in the next. So here, Krishna is pointing out the opposite. Oh, someone doesn't want to follow Bhagavad Gita? Someone does not want to render Krishna consciousness? Okay. Krishna says such a person is ignorant. Why is he ignorant? He has no faith. And why doesn't a person have faith? Because they don't associate with those self-realized souls that he mentioned previously. He refuses to associate with such self-realized souls. Therefore, he has no faith. And they doubt the revealed scriptures. One should have full faith in Bhagavad Gita, not doubt Bhagavad Gita. If you doubt Bhagavad Gita, you're not going to get God consciousness. You'll get bodily consciousness. And as he said, they fall down. He mentioned this in chapter 2. If you don't execute Krishna consciousness, what happens? Your senses will contemplate the objects of the senses. And by that contemplation, you become attached. Then lust. But lust, we learned in chapter 3, is never to be satisfied, and it burns like fire. Now you're in trouble. You lose your memory. You forget who you are. And gradually you fall down deeper into the modes of material energy. That's what he's talking about. You fall down. The goal of life is to go up, to transcend, to go to the kingdom of God. But if you don't practice Bhagavad Gita, you're going deeper and deeper down, lower into the material world. Remember, there are 8 million species of life lower than human being. And notice he said, for the doubting soul, doubting in the sense that not accepting Krishna and Bhagavad Gita, there's happiness neither in this world nor in the next. And what happens to such persons who neglect Bhagavad Gita? They're not coming back as human beings. They're going to go down lower into those 8 million lower species, animals, reptiles, aquatics, birds, insects. Yes, that's what's awaiting you if you don't accept Krishna and Bhagavad Gita. One who acts in devotional service, renouncing the fruits of one's actions, and whose doubts have been destroyed by transcendental knowledge, is situated factually in the self. Thus, One is not bound by the reactions of work, O conqueror of riches. Arjuna is famous by the name Dhananjay, conqueror of riches. Notice, your doubts will be destroyed by transcendental knowledge. Therefore, read Bhagavad Gita and slay your doubts. Therefore, the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, stand and fight. This is the final verse of this chapter. Notice what Krishna is saying. He's not telling Arjuna, Shanti, Shanti. He wants Arjuna to fight. Arjuna at the beginning of Bhagavad Gita did not want to fight. There are many purposes. One of the purposes of Bhagavad Gita is to get Arjuna to pick up his bow and fight this battle of Kurukshetra. How anyone can say that Bhagavad Gita is teaching non-violence means that such a person never understood one word of Bhagavad Gita. That's why we are studying and speaking Bhagavad Gita as it is. The doubts, they come from the heart. The subtle body, the soul, is located in the heart. This is clearly taught in Bhagavad Gita. And that's where the doubts come from. Now, we learn from the Srimad Bhagavatam, doubts, they are a sign of intelligence, but not that we remain in doubt. Doubts should be slashed by knowledge. And this transcendental knowledge was explained in this 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, every day read Bhagavad Gita and slash your doubts. I will end by invoking the holy name of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Chapter 5. Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. This chapter will explain a little further what was mentioned in Chapter 4 and some things that were mentioned in Chapter 3. We recall that Chapter 3 was entitled Karma Yoga, but now he's taking it a bit further because he introduced in the previous chapter action in non-action and non-action in action. So he's going to further solidify this concept of action in Krishna consciousness. In verses 1 through 6, Krishna will explain what is sannyas, karma yoga, and sankhya. Listen carefully. Arjuna said, O Krishna, first of all, you ask me to renounce work, and then again you recommend work with devotion. Now will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial? The personality of Godhead replied, the renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation, but of the two, work in devotional service is better than the renunciation of work. Renunciation of work, that is what is propagated by the impersonalist class of transcendentalists. They think that one will achieve freedom from all reaction simply by stopping all activity. But the devotees, the bhakti yogis, those who are in Krishna consciousness, they work in terms of devotional service. In action, in action. One who neither hates nor desires the fruits of one's activities is known to be always renounced. Such a person, free from all dualities, easily overcomes material bondage and is completely liberated, O mighty armed Arjuna. Once again, this is something Krishna has repeated several times, to be equipoised, not to be affected by the dualities of this material world. Only the ignorant speak of devotional service, or karma yoga, as being different from the analytical study of the material world, Sankhya. Those who are actually learned, they say that one who applies him or herself to one of these paths achieves the results of both, because the goal is the same. The goal is transcendental knowledge of Krishna. One who knows that the position reached by means of analytical study can also be attained by devotional service, and who therefore sees analytical study and devotional service to be on the same level, sees things as they are. Merely renouncing all activities and yet not engaging in the devotional service of the Lord cannot make one happy. But a thoughtful person engaged in devotional service can achieve the supreme without delay. This final statement is very telling. If I simply renounce my activities, I'm not going to be ultimately happy. But if I engage in service to Krishna, using my body, mind, and words in his service, then I will achieve the supreme state of Krishna consciousness. Now in verses 7 through 15, Krishna will explain the art of working. One who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls the mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to one. Though always working, such a person is never entangled. Here again, he reiterates what was mentioned in chapter 4, that the devotee, the one who works in Krishna consciousness, although he is acting or she is acting, there is no material reaction. Everything merges into transcendence. A person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing or hearing, touching or smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, and breathing, always knows within oneself that one actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, or opening or closing the eyes, one always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects, and that one is aloof from them. This harkens back to what we learned at the beginning of chapter 2, the difference between the body and the soul, the difference between what is eternal and what is temporary, the difference between matter and spirit. The body, like a machine, like a car, is doing so many actions and reactions, but the soul, the eternal person, the real you, is simply witnessing. You are not doing anything. One who performs one's duty without attachment, surrendering the results unto the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful action, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. Such a nice example given by Krishna. Those of you in India know this example very well. Although the lotus leaf is situated on the water, it actually does not touch. So when you act in Krishna consciousness, when you act according to Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, it may appear like you're in this material world, but actually, like that lotus leaf untouched by water, you are above. You are transcendental. The yogis, abandoning attachment, act with body, mind, and intelligence, and even with the senses, only for the purpose of purification. This is a very important verse. Those who practice Bhagavad Gita are known as karma yogis or bhakti yogis. And why do they act? Only for purification. Those who are just the opposite, the ignorant, the foolish, who are trying to enjoy this material world, they're not acting for purification. They're acting for sense gratification. And they will become entangled, and they will suffer the results. But a Krishna conscious person, a follower of Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, everything is done for purification, with the end result, transcendental knowledge, ultimately leading to love of God. The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because one offers the results of all activities to me. Whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the results of the labor, becomes entangled. So here Krishna gives two sides of the coin. If you're a devotee, then you act for Krishna's satisfaction and you become free. Whereas if you're not linking with Krishna, if you're not connected with Krishna, that means you're greedy and you want to enjoy the results of your activities. And as a result, you'll become entangled. The choice is yours. Krishna is giving us here in Bhagavad Gita, door number 1, you act in Krishna consciousness, liberation. You don't listen to Krishna, you go through door number 2, entanglement, further entanglement in the material world. The choice, Krishna does not interfere with your choice. You make the choice. That's why at the end of Bhagavad Gita we will see in chapter 18, Krishna will tell Arjuna, I have told you everything. Now you decide what you want to do. God does not force us. He has given us minute free will, minute independence. The choice to choose door number 1 or door number 2 has nothing to do with Krishna. That's your choice. Read Bhagavad Gita and make the right choice. Door number 1, surrender to Krishna. When the embodied living being controls their nature and mentally renounces all actions, he or she resides happily in the city of 9 gates, neither working nor causing work to be done. The city of 9 gates, where is that? Is that in India? Is it? No. This is the city of 9 gates. 2 ears, 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, the mouth, genital, rectum. The 9 gates. Krishna says here, you want to live happily in this city, the body? Then you have to control your nature, your senses, your mind. Perform Bhagavad Gita activities. Do everything for Krishna. This way, you're not going to create any material good or bad reaction. You will be happy. The embodied spirit, master of the city of the body, does not create activities, nor does one induce people to act, nor create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. Again, the body is like a car, like a machine with various parts. That's all that's happening in this material world. The senses are coming in contact with the objects of the senses. Reactions are happening. But you, the soul, the eternal person in the body, the passenger of the car, you're just observing what's happening. Nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. Our real knowledge is when we say, I am the eternal servant of Krishna. That's real knowledge. Now, what's covering that real knowledge? I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm American, I'm Hindu, I'm father, I am mother. These things cover my real knowledge. And this is why we are bewildered, because I am forgetting that I am Krishna's part and parcel. Notice Krishna says, don't blame me if you chose door number 2. I didn't make you do that. That was your choice. We see sometimes people say, oh, it's God's fault that this is. No. I made a choice. I made a decision, and now I'm getting the result. So you cannot blame God. Bhagavad Gita is teaching that we should assume responsibility for our fate, not blame anyone. We made a choice, and now we're getting the reaction. Bhagavad Gita is teaching, go down this path, go down Krishna's path, and you will see the result will be blissful. But if you don't follow Krishna's instructions and you go the other path, don't blame Krishna. What happens? You made the choice. Now, in verses 16 through 18, we will get transcendental vision. When, however, one is enlightened with the knowledge by which nescience is destroyed, then one's knowledge reveals everything as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. So transcendental knowledge is just like sunlight. When you go to sleep at night, it's dark. And if you get up in the middle of the night, you cannot see things distinctly. But when the sun comes out, everything is revealed. So when you have transcendental knowledge that you are part and parcel of Krishna, that you should act in relationship with Krishna, and ultimately achieve love of Krishna, at that time, everything will be revealed, just like when you wake up and the sun is on the rise. When one's intelligence, mind, faith, and refuge are all fixed in the Supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of misgivings through complete knowledge, and thus proceeds straight on the path of liberation. This is the path of Krishna consciousness. It's the path of liberation. In Sanskrit, apavarga. The material world is pavarga, and there's so much tribulation and suffering. But the path of Bhagavad Gita is the path of liberation. The humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, see with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater are outcast. Here we see that there is no equality in this material world. It's a world of duality. The world of equality is the absolute world, the abode of Krishna, the kingdom of God. But here, the person who follows Bhagavad Gita will be able to get equal vision, but it's not based on the material world. No, one sees transcendentally that there may be a Brahman, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater. They have different kinds of bodies. But what's within that body? There are two souls, and that will be explained in chapter 13. That within every body, there are two souls. The individual soul, who identifies with that machine or body, and the expansion of Krishna, known as Paramatma, super soul. Two souls within every body. And Someone who is fixed in transcendental knowledge is able to understand that driving each of those bodies, driving each of those cars, is the soul and the supersoul. And they are not one. They are two distinct living entities. That will be explained further in chapter 13. In verses 19 through 21, Krishna will explain Brahman realization. Those whose minds are established in sameness and equanimity have already conquered the conditions of birth and death. They are flawless like Brahman, and thus they are already situated in Brahman. Brahman is the first stage of understanding the absolute truth. The absolute truth is realized in three progressive features.